Hello, Sam. Welcome to Sippin' Sunday, the podcast. Let our listeners know what you're sipping on or what your favorite drink is.
So everyone makes fun of me because I like bourbon if I do sip on something, and everyone calls that like an old man drink. So it's just funny. I was introduced to bourbon by someone that's also like not like an old man. Like my grandpa didn't introduce me to bourbon. It was just you know, it was someone that was like maybe 6, 7 years older than me.
Okay, gotcha. I'm not a bourbon fan. We did have one other person that was a guest say they like bourbon or whiskey. To me, both of those are the same, but I know they're not, but they're in the same family per se.
Yeah, nah, bourbon's better.
I'm sipping some champagne from Cooper's Hawk, my favorite place in the whole wide world, with my I Can't Adult Today glass. You can buy it on the website, everybody that's listening. And I'm super excited to have you here. You have a lot of good things to share with the listeners. The first thing I always ask everybody is let us know what age you feel you became an adult if you reached that age yet.
So I would say like I used to say like, oh, I became an adult. Like when I was younger, I would buy my own clothes, get my own haircuts, like get myself to work, whatever, whatever. But I think I would say about 25 because I think there's a time period where you experience adulthood, but you're not an adult yet. So I think
Yes.
for me, like 17, 18, when I really start making my own decisions, I thought I was an adult then. But it wasn't until 25 where I feel like, all right, I've actually became an adult. I understand how to like navigate and survive in this world without like major panic. Of course, there's
Yeah.
like frustration, but it's like adulthood is like when you become an adult, you start to understand like how to navigate the world as a grown person.
Yeah. And I love this because now, as this is season two, for all of the guests, most of them had said around the same age. A couple said they feel like they haven't reached it yet, or that it might have been earlier on, but most people say between like 24 to 27. And a lot of the themes that I'm seeing is it comes with like responsibility of some sort, or you had a major life change, like moving, grad school, a
Mhm.
job, or something like that made you feel like you're an adult. So one day this is all going to be a research study because that's always interesting to me that people with completely different lives that they've lived have similar ages and similar things that make them feel like they were an adult.
Nah, that's facts.
So you have a very unique story that you share with the world in your business and your speaking engagements and your book, which we'll get into. So talk a little bit about like your path that's gotten you to where you are now and how you found motivation throughout some of the tough times in life.
Yeah, so I think like I'll give so anytime when I travel and I speak, I I I share like my story on how I got to who I am today. So I'll give like a shorter version because it's a keynote, like
And
45
book
minutes.
him. Exactly. Book him if you need him.
But but essentially like my life started like very innocent. It started even though there was a lot of like things that could have taken my innocence away, like drugs, like broken homes to a certain extent when you break down like what a broken home is, like love, but maybe love not like how it should be, different things like that. And but it was very innocent for me. I played games, I played with my friends, like
Hmm.
but at the age of 9, that's when like my first taste of life happened when my dad passed, and I really just like didn't know what to do. Um, moving to a different city and to Philadelphia, like being in a space where I'm not like feeling like I'm welcome in like
Hmm.
family spaces, to experiencing homelessness, to ultimately ending up in my hometown that I praise up and down Coatesville, Pennsylvania. It's a small town, 45 minutes west of Philly, but it's where I actually like have memories because I
Hmm.
think the first like 9 years of my life it was just a lot of like moments, but not like memories where I really like remember things. And then from there, like, of course, like a person that's experienced trauma and not like getting the right support, I acted out. I got in trouble a lot. It was my way of fitting in. early on in elementary and middle school. Middle school got worse. Like I used to play pranks on my teachers,
Oh my God.
get into fights, and adults they would never like under ask me what's going on or never wonder why like I behaved the way I did because my grades weren't horrible.
Yeah.
So I wasn't your typical like bad kid per se. Like he did his work, but he's also a clown.
Yeah.
But they treated me like, I wasn't going to make it or I wasn't going to amount to anything. But a few adults, I would say, really helped me during my middle school time. My assistant principal, Dr. Miles, and my guidance counselor, Miss McGivney, they really kind of put me in a situation I didn't know I needed by sending me away from the school district
Mm-hmm.
into a charter school where it was African centered. It wasn't the greatest education wise. I'm not going to sit here and say I learned a lot education wise, like math, science, but
Yeah.
I understood about who I was and I learned about my people and the different struggles. And I think that really helped me. And then ultimately, what really kind of shifted my trajectory was when I joined the Coatesville Youth Initiative, which was a program. And that's where I met people that really saw past my behavior. And
Yep.
I think that's where a lot of people fail at when they think about our youth today. They see them behaving reckless and they're like, oh, they're just reckless. But why? You know? So for me, that was a turning point. I got in that program. I started to see myself as a leader. I ultimately started to look at my community different. That's why I love Coatesville and I'll rep it everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, that was like the launching pad to becoming who I am today. Going from expulsion to a scholarship to college, becoming president of the Black Student Union while I was there, winning Homecoming King, becoming the second African American to win Homecoming King to
Mm-hmm.
ultimately like really shaping who I am as a person, finding my voice in a public speaking class after I had a meltdown freshman year about, you know, did I make the right choice by going to
Mm-hmm.
college, to graduation, to helping out youth, spending the last decade working with youth directly, doing what someone did for me, and ultimately using my voice on different platforms like this,
Yeah.
um, like stages, different things like that as a speaker, and then ultimately writing a book that's behind me.
Shout
So
out to the authors.
that is like my truncated version of what I share in my keynote, but
Yeah.
that's just how I became who I am today, and what has shaped me to help me truly grow through what I go through.
Yeah. And that's the book title, everybody. Make sure you buy it on Amazon, purchase it, booking for your keynotes. Thank you for sharing that. And a couple things stood out to me. So one, just starting from that, at such an early age, you had something pretty life changing happen to you with your father passing away. And then in school, you're acting out, and people you said weren't necessarily trying to understand why. They were just kind of brushing it off as like, this is just a young black boy acting out, not getting to the root of the issues. Did you have any siblings that were close in age to you in school with you as well?
So the thing is, me and my sister that's closest to me, Nikki, we lived in Coatesville.
Okay,
My other two sisters were adults at the time, and they lived in
gotcha.
Philly.
Gotcha.
So me and my sister went to school together a few times, but it was like one of them siblings where it's like we siblings, but when we get to school, we don't know each other.
And that's why I was asking one because I remember you mentioned you have siblings. So I was just curious of like how was that dynamic or how did that show up at school with relationships with teachers or people knowing your siblings and like you're acting out and maybe your sister isn't and whatever their situation is, but
Yeah, now
y'all
my
both didn't know each
sister,
other.
she got great. She smart. She's smarter than me. Like that's how smart she is. I think, you know, it was just one of them things. Like she just didn't have to try hard in
Yeah,
school. I'm over here studying. She's over here just chilling and just
that
doing
was
her
me
homework,
sometimes.
and it's just easy. So,
Okay.
but no, we didn't really have a relationship. And then eventually, we were never in the school at the same time because
Okay.
she's like 2.5 years older than me,
Gotcha.
almost 3 years older than me.
So then, with what you were experiencing, did you feel like you felt alone at that time as a kid going through school, and you were being seen to teachers as something that maybe in the beginning you didn't feel like you were, but because they kept kind of like projecting that on you, and you didn't have your sibling close in age or in the same grade or around, did you feel like you were alone or kind of isolated from that situation?
So I mean, at the time, like as an adult, I could look back and said I just had a bad group of friends because they weren't really my friends. But at the time, I didn't care about getting
Oh,
suspended. To be honest, like because at the end of the day, it's like it is what it is. Like, was
yeah.
I mad like when I had to do in school suspension or when I was like grounded? Like, yeah, of course. But like, I had fun. Not gonna lie, like I had fun for the most part. So when it came to that, it was like, nah, I wasn't. I didn't really feel alone per se.
Okay. Oh, I'm just curious because I always feel like, well, for facts in psychology, that how your childhood went and things you experienced, like, can show up as an adult or they can like impact you as an adult. But I just know that you have done a lot of work to maintain just like your peace and just becoming a better individual than what people might have thought you would become. So that's why I was curious about the did you feel alone or how were you feeling during that time? And you mentioned fast forwarding, you get into a different school, you go to a mentorship program, you're going to college. What did you think you were going to do after high school initially as all this was like transpiring?
So it's funny, like I didn't really want to continue school because I never really liked school per se. It never really was my thing. Like I I only like school a little bit. It's like in college, like you got those couple classes throughout your college career that you was like, yo, this was a great class. But outside of that, I felt like I was learning to just learn.
Yeah.
I really always felt at an early age like, why do I need to know the square root of this?
Valid question.
Why do I need to actually know that? So I think it was just like only the classes where I actually learned something that I could apply to my life. But in regards to like just like that transition and like going into college, um, right before that, I was actually about to enter the army. Um, I didn't know what to do. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to school. I actually didn't really submit college applications
Okay.
until like towards the end of the school year, but I did get accepted into like 10 schools. It was just like, I don't want to go to school. But what actually stopped me, the same organization that really helped change my life again. Cause I was right about to sign the dotted line. I already took the test, the physical. He was like, yo, we need you, this, that, and the third. You know how they go. Anything to get somebody and
Yes,
with a
signed
gun
up.
in the field, but no disrespect. But it was a phone call where that organization, the Coachville Youth Initiative, called me and asked me if I want to come back and be associate coordinator, basically help run the same program that changed my life. So
Yeah.
that's what I did. And then I went off to school. But that's how I feel like how I actually went to college.
Yeah, because they saw something in you. They were like motivating you. They were giving you resources and helping you so that you could figure out what it was that you wanted to do. What was your major?
I major in speech communication with a
Okay.
concentration in public relations.
This all makes sense. And when you know people, but you don't like, we don't just regularly have these types of conversations, but you
Right.
saying that makes a lot of sense to now where you are. And you might not have thought at that time this is where you would be, but here you
No,
are.
fixed. And I actually started in business, and that's what made me want to drop out of school. It was like, I can't do this. I was in macro and microeconomics, like about to pull my hair out. I was like, I can't do this. I don't know nothing about nothing that y'all talking about. But once I got into communication and we started learning about body language and speech and how communication, business to consumer,
Yeah.
I think that actually helped me also get out of my shell because I was a very shy kid per se before college.
Gotcha. And so you've gone through all this stuff, and like I know that the adults and that program motivated you, but what gave you like the self motivation? Because outside people can only do but so much. At the end of the day, you do have to like do the work yourself. You have to be motivated to move forward. And like, what was that for you?
I think for me, it was just like I've seen everything I didn't want to be or didn't want to do in this world because I was exposed to all levels of life,
Yeah.
from homelessness to living in the projects to living in a house for the first time to moving from apartment to apartment. I lived in 5 or 6 different cities in the state of Pennsylvania because my dad was an army man. We moved a lot. Um, that's just how he just operated, even once he got out the service. But um, what really, hmm, I think for me, it was just, dang, this is like the first time I had to really think about this question.
Because again, like you do great things, like you know what you didn't want to be, but like something had to push you to continue or do better to get yourself somewhere that would set your future up for success.
Yeah, because like when I think about it, it's so much that could have motivated me. I never actually sat back and thought about what motivates you because I feel like motivation is like short term and short lived. And unless like you're constantly kind of going back to the
Yeah.
well and getting your fill, getting your bucket refilled of more motivation of the same thing. So I would say if I had to pick my well of what was that thing I kept going back to remember to motivate me, I would definitely just say like just how I seen my family live.
Yeah.
Um, and what I got exposed to when I moved to Coatesville, like having my own room for the first time, having a house, having a backyard, like being able to play outside of an apartment complex. I think that's what motivated me, and the fact that like I just wanted to do it for my parents.
Yeah.
Um, you know that whole like I always wanted to do it for my parents, but I just wanted to like be that person in my family that was just different.
Yeah.
Um,
No, makes
And that,
sense.
I think that's what motivated me, wanting to be different for the right reasons to change how our family is going to continue to grow from there.
So basically breaking generational curses. And even if in the moment, like as a kid experiencing those things that might not have been like the forefront of your mind, or you might not have had the words to like put that together, but now being an adult where you're at, it's because you want to set your family up for success in the future and the bloodline to know that there's better out there from where you've come from.
Nah, for sure.
And I think that in the black community, for sure, just people in our age range, that is a huge factor in like how we are living our lives because we want to make sure that we are set up for success and that we can try to break out of cycles because we're not really far removed from when slavery and all that was going on, even though it feels like we are. And
Hmm.
yes, we personally didn't live at that time, but like our parents might have been living during that time. Our grandparents, for sure, were living during that time. Our great grandparents. And those things trickle down to generation from the trauma and from just like the mindset that you had. It might not be showing up in the same way. And a lot of people say, like, we have like mental shackles on our mind because of those things. But our
Hmm.
generation definitely is trying to our best to not have to live in some of those mindsets and break out of it. Is it hard? Yes, because our grandparents, parents don't always understand, but I think that we're
Yeah.
doing
So,
better.
like to that point, I think it's the biggest thing that even you could look throughout history, even in slavery, right? It was like exposure. The
Yes.
moment that like we're exposed to a possibility is a moment that things change. That's why like neighborhoods are constructed a certain way so that you're exposed to what you see, therefore you
Yeah.
that creates your ceiling. um And a lot of young people that live in like poverty, impoverished neighborhoods, they all they see is like barely making it, like people going to job barely making it, violence, crime, drugs, Chinese stores, liquor stores, like rundown
Yeah.
like apartments, buildings. So therefore, they're going to believe that this is what it's going to be. But
Yeah.
the moment that you take them out of that neighborhood, the moment that you like drive to another state and you just see something different, it's like wow. Then you have to get them to believe it, because just because they
Yeah.
see it doesn't mean like because they know they got to go back to wherever they're going. So I
Yes.
think for like our community, even expanding on that from just like the youth, it's like young people, young black people in America, and within the generation of like young adulthood, is just being able to see past what we've been kind of spoon fed of like you're going to grow up. You're going to go to college, get a degree, work this job, make this X amount of money, and that's what life is. And I think being able to be exposed to different things, you start to believe a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I think that can unlock the key for a lot of people that are stuck in the way of like, these are the cards I was dealt, so I'm gonna just play this hand.
Yeah, for sure.
Versus like getting up from the table and going playing another game.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy for it. And it does make me think about like our students that we work with. Like I'm from New York. I grew up in the suburbs of New York. I went to school in Long Island and I met a lot of people like from the city, and I never could have imagined myself living in Baltimore, not because anything is wrong with Baltimore. I had no opinion of Baltimore before I moved here. Like I didn't see or know of the things that people talk badly about Baltimore for. But moving here, I love being here for a lot of the reasons you're saying, to be able to be an example for our students that look like us. Because yes, I did not grow up in conditions that they grew up in, but I do look like them, and I'm somebody that they can look up to know that like, oh, like Miss Amber has a master's degree, like what's that? Miss Amber has a house, like Miss Amber has a car, or even when they see you, like Mr. Sam's an author, like he has a book, like, and I'm talking to somebody like this every day, like that's
Mhm.
crazy to them. Like it makes me think of and insecure when the kids went to the house for that little thing, and he was like, when I grow up I want to have a house with batteries in the drawer. And like that sounds so simple, and like to us like you should just have batteries in your house, but a kid growing up in the
Mhm.
hood or in an area that they don't have exposure, like to them that is the, like you said, like the ceiling, that's what they're trying to reach to. And it's good to be able to show up for our students, and help them, because I feel like when they see us, what I've been encouraging the class that I work with now to do is like, you're here, but your friends might not be here. So talk to your friends about the things that we're talking about here, so that like if somebody's not able to be a part of this group, you're still giving them that knowledge and giving them that exposure. And I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, it might be weird because they're talking to your friend about like professionalism and trying to get a job, but they need you to do that if they're not in this room. And that's how you build your network. And that's just how you are able to move forward in life as well.
Nah, for sure. And I think the biggest skill we can teach young people that cannot control like where they live and what they see is leadership.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, like even though I didn't live in like the roughest neighborhood or the toughest conditions, I based on what I experienced, I still could have like really went down a bad path.
Yeah.
But the one thing that when I started to see myself as a leader, I think teaching young people leadership, it empowers them to believe in themselves. Because as a
Yeah.
leader, you must believe in yourself for other people to believe in you. So it's like when you're telling them like this is what you have in you, you have the ability to stand up in a room and lead a group of people somewhere or lead a group of people from point A to point Z. They start to believe in themselves and start to believe like, okay, I can get more for myself. I can
Yeah.
grow. I can develop because as a leader, you have to think about growth because of the fact that whoever is looking up to you is also growing. So
Yeah.
you have to continue to grow. So that's what pushes you to think differently than what has been created for you to think.
Yeah, for sure. And a question too I wanted to ask about your school. Um the first school that you went to, was it like a mixed population, mostly black, white, Hispanic?
So it was definitely mixed with white, black,
Okay.
Hispanic, different races, because Coatesville is like a melting pot.
Okay.
It's all different ethnicities and races.
Okay. Just curious because I also grew up in a very mixed environment, and I think that like going to college shows you, depending on like what type of school you go to, like what you were exposed to or weren't exposed to, because you're then with a whole new group of people that are coming from all across the world and out of the country. And I think that your circumstances that you grew up in don't define you, but it's hard to be open to new experiences and new people if you didn't see that before. And again, you're not taught, or people haven't talked to you about these types of things of meeting new people, going to college, going to just work and meeting new people and seeing people that don't look like you, being able to interact with like older people, younger people, like authority figures. There's so many different nuances and things that when you graduate high school you have zero idea about, and it's really like either like sink or swim. And unfortunately, if they start sinking that early, it's gonna be very difficult to like pull yourself out of that situation, because the world is a crazy place for everybody, but I feel more specifically it's a crazy place for our youth now entering into the world.
Nah, 1,000%.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so with the work you do, actually talk a little bit about how did you get into mentorship, and what did you do before you started working at Urban Alliance? Because I know that you we've had conversations about like higher education, you're speaking, but what were you doing before that, and what led you to this career path now?
So basically, all of my jobs that I've had since young adulthood has been the Coachville Youth Initiative.
Hmm.
I worked there like 2013, which was like my freshman year of college, to like 2016, about to enter my senior year. Then I came back in 2020, but in between that, I worked at another nonprofit
Okay.
called Valley Youth House,
Okay.
providing
Gotcha.
workshops, life skills, job skills. So basically, I've spent my entire like professional career in youth development.
Okay.
Yes, I've worked at Apple. I worked at organization that supports the life skill and job skill development of young people or people on the spectrum, like
Yep.
young. I think it went up to like 24, 25. So a lot of it has been a lot of service, direct service, teaching,
Yep.
facilitating, managing large scale programs, different things like that. So for me, um, I've always tried to align myself with speaking because by the time I graduated college, I was at a point in my life where my speaking career, the seed was planted.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of it sparked from just wanting to help the little Sams of the world all around. But what also sparked it was my senior year of college. Entering my senior year was January, actually the 27th of the mark. Um, 7 years since my mom was killed. So that really also put me in a position where I needed something because
Yeah.
life wasn't the same. Losing both my parents,
Yeah.
and
For
then
sure.
essentially like also losing my personality because I'm a very upbeat, like happy go lucky, joking around person. So for me, that also planted the seed that ultimately became my speaking career, sharing my
Yeah.
story of combining youth development and helping out young people, even young people in college, because I still believe you're a youth until
Yeah, for
you're
sure.
25. Um, but just being able to help them, but then also liberate myself.
Yeah.
And my voice was very liberating, being able to speak about the things that I've experienced and that I had to deal with in life and
Yeah.
how it has shaped me both negative and positive and what I'm doing to become the best version of myself.
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you again for sharing. And I just commend people, especially when you're losing your parents at a young age and your parents or guardians are so crucial in your development. So when you're losing them for various circumstances, it can be hard to process. It can be hard to understand. The world also, like, I just think about kids in school, like, you're always making jokes about people's parents, like, without knowing anything about them. But sometimes students have lost their parents or they're being raised by other people. So I think that just awareness and speaking about it more really helps to change how people talk about things in high school, middle school, and even just like teachers and adults addressing kids, because they're like, oh, like, do you live with your parents? Like, like, where's your parent? Like, where's your mom? Where's your dad? And that can be very triggering for a child and uncomfortable to have to speak about that in such a young age, and then people think it's weird. So again, I commend you for talking about your story, sharing your story, and just being the person you are, even though these things have happened to you. Because I always say, take me when they go, because I know we all are like made with the strength and the things we need to overcome these types of things, but I just feel like when it happens, it's really a lot.
Nah, for sure. And I think that's why I'm always speaking on it. That's why I like getting support with mental health is so important. Because um, when it comes to experiences in life, we have to accept that we're not okay. And I
Yeah,
think we
for
live in a
sure.
society where being not okay is a sign of weakness, and we live in a society where everyone doesn't want to look weak,
Yeah,
right? And I think that's what I had to learn, and that's why therapy over the past 2 years when I've actually like taken it serious has opened my eyes to understanding things that I didn't even know I had wounds. Like,
yeah,
so not just the obvious wounds of like losing my parents, but like what are like what is like the byproduct of that,
yeah,
and how is that affecting me? And I think that's what like diving deep, because
yeah,
if we think surface level, then we think, oh, once I get past that, I'm good. But really, it's like now you only scratch the surface of why you're not, why things are happening to you, why you're
yeah.
feeling a certain way, why you're impacted, how you like date, how you treat
Yes,
people,
exactly.
everything. So I think even in young adulthood, it's like I think people should just go, even if it's like not like a dire emergency. I think people need to be able to have something to release and have real conversation, but a healing conversation where people
Yeah,
can help you versus like you just chopping it up with your friends, or you chopping it up, you know, with people that like are on podcasts but saying they're
yeah,
therapists. Like it's not the same form
I
of
agree.
healing. Um, so yeah, so I would
No,
say
I
like
agree.
that's a big thing when it came from me and what has helped sustain me, because I've definitely spiraled many years, and but that's what bounces me back.
Yeah. And I feel like with therapy, it's like completely agree with what you're saying. Is like, yes, you can talk to your friends. Yes, you can listen to podcasts. You can pray. You can read the Bible. You can listen to sermons, all that stuff. But I feel like the difference of a therapist is like, one, it's a non-judgmental, like, not, they're not on any side. They're literally like learning about you without a lot of back history, without a lot of like the chatty gossip way that you might be talking to your friends. Like, they're not going to bring up something from the past that would just like re-trigger you or anything like that. Like, a therapist is really a non-biased person trying to help you better your life. But to your point of like, when you take it serious, you have to show up to therapy ready to tell the truth, ready to hold yourself accountable, ready to talk about things that you may have never talked to anybody about. Because if you don't, it's not going to help you in therapy. So you have to be like very honest with yourself and self aware and ready to take it serious if you want to go to therapy and actually get the help from therapy that you're looking to get.
Nah, fact. Shout out to my girlfriend because she told me like you gotta start talking more in therapy.
We love a
Because I was
supportive
in there
partner.
just saying, "Hey, I'm cool. It's cool. We had this conversation." She's like, "No, like." She was saying it without saying it, which I respected. She's a therapist too, fully licensed, the GOAT, greatest therapist ever. But
We love that.
she really just helped me understand what therapy is because I didn't even really understand it. And that's why I struggled with it
Yeah.
for like 7 years trying to go to therapy. And it just was, I go 3 sessions, stop. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people is like we go, we feel like we good and then we stop. And she really opened my eyes like, it ain't really a stop. Like
No,
most of the things that you're trying to manage in therapy, it's not really like a, this would be fixed in 2 weeks or 3 sessions.
exactly.
So, and then I really just started enjoying it because it was my release. Because the things that we say in therapy, we don't say nowhere else. And I think
Exactly.
people also got to look at that as like you're actually talking to someone else, not like just yourself,
Yeah.
and being able to say all your truths and not be judged, like you said, is like therapeutic
Yeah.
and liberating.
And it is ongoing as well because like one, it's like you have to try out a therapist and see if you're actually gonna like them and get what you're trying to get out of it. So the honesty is huge. But it's like you can go to therapy for say 6 months because something traumatic happened and then you feel like you're past that. But if you stop going to therapy, that continuation of your healing stops. And then something else will happen that will trigger it. And then you're like, let me get back to therapy. But there's been a pause and yeah. So
Not facts.
I argue what you're saying. Everybody go to therapy. Just try it out too. Even if you don't like that therapist or you don't feel like you like therapy at the time, you can try a different therapist. And that goes with like again being honest with your therapist. If you feel like you need to break up with them, if you feel like you want somebody else, like those are all things that are real. You don't have to stick with somebody if you don't like them or you don't feel like you're getting what you need. But again, I keep repeating it because it's the most important part that you need to be honest with yourself and the therapist.
Nah, facts.
And it kind of leads into with you talking about that. The next question I have for you is like, what does self care look like for you as a black man, and how did you learn to take care of yourself as well?
I think self care is like a mixture of doing things and like also like not doing things, if that makes sense. So like doing things like the things that just bring you joy, like just chill, like it's a good vibe. And as much as like my girlfriend think I don't like my game because I be getting mad at it, and mad at the people in there, like I enjoy playing it. I enjoy playing my video game. That's like bringing me self care. People might call it childish, but I mean,
People
like,
need to go back to what they loved as a child. That is another very strong theory. Well, not theory, again, facts that I know. If we did things we loved as a child more, the world would be a better place and adults would be less crazy. You need to play
nah,
games. You need to get outside. You need to color. You need to journal. You need to take naps. Like, do all the stuff you did as a kid, and we will be just fine.
nah, facts. And then like, so that's really like the only thing I do. I have a few like I don't watch a lot of TV, but I have a couple shows, so I might just like chill on the couch, watch a
Yeah.
couple episodes if I got the time. But as far as just like the the other part, the second part of like doing and not doing, I think something else for self care that I've learned is not just doing everything. I think being able to kind of have boundaries and saying no to things and making decisions
For
that is
sure.
best for you, like yourself. I think a lot of times my decision making is like connected to people that is like hard to say no, or like I just don't want to say no because it's like they're connected with me. I want to help them out, but I think sometimes it's like being able to say no. It's like my grandfather taught me this. He said, if someone asks for $20 and you only got $20, say you don't got 20, but you got 10. And if they don't want to take it, then they really ain't need that 20. Um,
Yes, correct.
so I think like just that small instance of like doing that more, and then also just like saying no to things and like giving myself rest because I'm always on the road. I'm always doing something, always traveling, always like just going, going, going. So saying no enough to like so I can slow down and do the things that I love, like
Yep.
play games, watch TV.
Yeah, I for sure agree with that because, as you know, we just celebrated the 5 year anniversary of the Adulting Queen and did the podcast live, and that was like the main thing everybody kept saying. Because when my family came on stage, and Sharif was the host, and since he's known me for like literally ever, everybody was just like, Amber, you do a lot of things. You need to rest. And I feel like a lot of people that I know, we're all very like minded of like we're just trying to do kind of like as much as we can because we want to better our futures and we want to set up like the next generation for success. We want to be able to rest later down the line. So we're trying to do as much as we can, but we're tired. And so resting is a very big theme of a lot of people that do things like us of working with youth, helping other people a lot, doing you have a book, like you were working on your book, you have your own business, speaking engagements, you have a girlfriend, like we just have lives, like all that stuff balancing can definitely become a lot. So the resting part, I am working to do better. I mean, I do it pretty well, but I definitely need to do better with just like the things that are to come because with stuff growing, like with my business growing, with just like work picking up, life, I need to rest more because I know that if something like came that was unexpected, it would definitely throw off the whole schedule because of how many things there are going on.
Nah, 1,000%. Yeah, that's why I still have to get better just with like the concept of time. I always
Yeah.
think I have more time than I actually do, but yeah. So I'm doing a little bit more resting this year. I mean, I'm still like growing a business. Definitely traveling a lot more early on in the beginning of the
Yeah.
year than I did last year, which is a great thing because it's more business, more growth, more success. But I think like it was like a month in July where I was in a different state every week. Like I would literally fly out somewhere, fly out to like New Mexico, be there for a couple of days, fly home, wake up the next day, go back to the airport, fly out to upstate New York, be there a week, come back, and just it was a cycle. And
Yeah.
I told myself I thought I wanted that, like, oh, I'm just trying to like speak everywhere and travel. And I'm realizing that I still want it. I just don't want it at that level. So
Yeah.
what do I have to do to get there? And that's how I'm always thinking. It's like, what do I have to do to get to my next ceiling?
Yeah.
And my ceiling is always my next floor. So meaning like once I get here, that's my floor now. What is my next ceiling?
Yeah.
And that's why
Yeah.
I like my grandfather, he always told me, he always said like what's next. Like every time I come to him with accomplishments, he would always say what's next. And I used to get frustrated and then I've realized that he was just always telling me to stay hungry,
Yeah.
stay humble, stay hungry, stay focused, and understand that you always can get to another level. So for me, like that's my next level. It's like I experienced speaking at a high level, getting paid a lot of money in 1 month. But now, how can I do that consistently?
Yeah.
But how can I do it less, but
Yes.
and still get like more out of it?
Yeah.
So that's that next level that this year I'm focused on.
Yeah. For I think it was either when I watched the virtual tour for Lovey Ajayi Jones' book Professional Troublemaker. I think it was hers. Kev on stage was one of the hosts for one of them, and he was saying like for him starting out, and even like Kevin Hart when I read his book, it was a similar thing that they were like they were just taking and doing any and everything because they were trying to get out there, they're trying to build, they're trying to do all of that. But he was like eventually to your point, like you just can't do every and anything because you're burning yourself out. You're doing more work for not the amount that you want, but you're doing it because you're trying to get out there. So he was like, you just need to like figure out what is your price and advertise that price, do that thing, and work backwards of like, I want to do this many speaking engagements and I want to make this much. This is how much I have to charge for all of these and put all your effort into like that advertising, that marketing for those people that will come for that. And that is hard because even I've had to like reevaluate that sometimes with like my speaking engagements and stuff because for the work we do, we're working for people. We want to help people. So to say no to an organization or a place that's trying to reach out to you, even though you know what you're delivering is great and needed, but you're saying no because of like your time, your compensation, and what your goals are, it's a very hard line that I'm trying to navigate. I would say this year for sure. But I guess the advice to both of us really is figure out our prices, figure out what we want, and work to get that in less speaking engagements for people who are going to pay the higher price if that's
No,
what they want
for
to
sure,
consider
sure.
it.
Like it's just always about how you value yourself and
Exactly.
understanding the market. And that's what I'm learning as a businessman. And that's like where I really understood like entrepreneurship is so much more than selling a product. Um,
It's a lot.
it's really just understanding like the market, understanding your market value, understanding how to like enter a market or like be like start to grow within the market. And that's what I'm
Yeah.
looking at is like how can I continue to grow? How can I niche down like what I do? How can I position myself knowing that like this is like who I am, this is like packaging myself, right? So I'm just learning all of that and I think that helps me when it comes to speaking and getting engagements. And I think that what has helped me with this early on in this year. Just getting like a couple bookings in
Yeah.
February, a couple bookings in March.
Yeah.
There was something I wasn't doing last year. So again, it's to my grandfather's point. It's like, what is your next ceiling? What's next? So for me, for people out there, for young people out there, regardless of whatever you're doing, you have to like ask yourself, what is next? What am I aiming for next? And understand that like you can't think small, but don't think too far fetched to where it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot. But
Yeah.
your what's next can be 1%, 1%, 1%. And that's
And then
actually like
eventually that makes it
something
more.
that, yeah, that's something that I talk about in my book. It's like brick by brick mentality. And for me, for the past 4 years of me building this, it has been that. It has been brick by brick. First, it was
Yeah.
Instagram. Then it was free. Then it was, panels. Then it was a conference. Then it was a small conference. Then it was this. Then it was that. Then now I'm at a point where it's like people are paying me. They're paying for my stay, paying for my flight, paying for my
Food
travel, paying
out. We
for my
love it.
food. So it's like, but that I started in my grandma's like bedroom. Like I started in my grandma's house, like in my bedroom, on a bed that was on the floor, like in a phone in my hand, an iPhone like 7. And that's really like when I think back, I look at that, and that's what I want a lot of young people to, and people that are adults, that are
Yeah.
young adults trying to figure it out. It's like you're going to figure it out if you just keep going, but you have a focused plan of this is what's next.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
don't know what's next, figure it out. It's not like we can't, we're not like capable. And if you don't, and if you feel like you're not capable, get a mentor. People are out there that will mentor you for free. People out there will just want to see you succeed, but you got to put yourself in a position to do that once you start to reach young adulthood, because now it's like it's on you. Um, but it's not just on you. Like it's
Yeah.
on you to make the decisions to get the support and help you need
Yes.
if you need
Exactly.
it at the same time.
Yeah. And then that made me think too, even when I got my house, like everybody kept asking me what was next. And I was frustrated too. So when you were saying that, that's what it made me think about because I was like, I literally just got this house. I am tired. Like I'm trying to just relax and cruise. Like I don't know what's next. But I like the way that you're framing it of like, it's not asking what's next to be rushing or like burning yourself out. You're just asking yourself what's next so you're not getting stagnant. So you still continue to have goals, you're still aiming for something to continue just like pushing through in this crazy world.
Nah, facts. And I mean, celebrate your wins. Like I'm never a person that does. Like I mean, I need to push to celebrate my wins sometime, but I've gotten better with it. But I think it's more so having a mentality,
Yeah.
not necessarily jumping into action right then and there.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, all right, bet by the end of the year, this is where I want to be. You don't want to be that old head that's talking about back in high school and you're 40. Like you just don't. Like it's just not really like something that you. I mean, I didn't want to be that. So
Yeah.
I think it's more so a mentality that I'm speaking on than telling people you need to do this and then jump to the next thing. So I don't want no one that's listening to get confused. It's more so
Yeah.
having the mentality. It's like I'm here. Let's celebrate, but let's just think about the next small step,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I want people to understand, that your next step can literally be that, like, and
Yeah.
take a step in real life. That's how much growth that you need to focus on.
Because they need to grow through what they go through. So
Hmm.
that's the book. But that's a great point because I feel like you see this when you get to college too. That like you see the people in college that are like, oh, in high school I was this, in high school I was that. But when you get to college, I view it as like that's a time to redefine and like rebuild yourself and like really discover who you are or recreate who you were because high
Hmm.
school does not matter once you leave high school. It really does not. And then when you leave college, college does not matter when you leave college. However, those relationships and the network you build and the things that college might afford you with opportunities that high school didn't are important other and there are ways to stay connected with that. And then when you graduate college and you go to grad school, you get a job, you get a career, whatever, things really don't matter. Like people don't care like about certain things. Like I feel like in our work, like the things we did in college are unique and we talk about them because it's relevant to the work we do. But if you are an accountant, nobody cares that you were homecoming king and you were the president of an organization and all this
Hmm.
stuff. That's just the reality. Like those are
That's
great accomplishments and you can talk about your leadership skills in that. But if you go saying like I was homecoming king, like they're gonna be like, okay, cool, thanks for letting me
like,
know.
man,
Like
like
get back
what
to
have
work.
you done? Nah, facts. And like the one thing also that that I want to talk about and for your viewers is understanding that um, you have to always evaluate your value system, because I think like sometimes people are stuck with a value system that they had 10 years ago. And it's like, what's your value system when you go into college? Like, what do you value in life now? What do you focus on in life, right? And then once you graduate college, like, what's your value system? So I teach like young people and students, like, let's update it. Let's talk about the things like you may not have valued like family before, but you value family now. Um, or you may not have valued, money before, but you value money
Mm-hmm.
now because you're paying your own bills. So it's like, but when our value systems don't match our lifestyle or match the person that we've become, that's when we feel the most like disconnected, right? Because it's like we're wondering like why things keep happening. It's like change your value system, change how you think, change what you believe in, change what you think is important, because then it's going to change your actions, and
Yes.
that's when your life is going to start to line up.
Yeah.
Is when you start to understand like what am I valuing, right? Um, and for me, like for a long time, I didn't value family growing up because I was never really around family.
Mm-hmm.
Like the last big family thing I remember as a young person is a family reunion that went left, and you know how family reunions can go left. So it's like
Yes.
when I saw that, I'm like, that's what family is. I don't want no parts of that. I don't want people that
Yeah.
love me one day, hate me the next. But as I got older, I understood, like, and especially like losing my mom, I understood like what does like family mean to me now.
Yeah.
And even now, it's like trying to rekindle relationships like with my sisters and just being more actively involved
Yeah.
and just doing more things like just communicating with them on a daily basis. I start to feel better about life. Like
Yeah.
feeling goes away of like of just like uneasiness in life
Yeah.
or like what's going on. So
Yeah.
now I'm starting to feel more balanced. And I think for young adults, understanding what you value and aligning that with your actions can start to create more balance in your life.
Yeah. And to remember that like you can create the life you want for sure. I have the quote, I'm like stared at it as we were saying in my office. It's like I'm creating the life of my dreams. Like because you saw something that wasn't good or made you feel whatever, like you can still recreate something. And I think that's also a part when we get older and adults, and you think you can't because somewhere along the line you lose like the curiosity that you had as a kid and the like open mindedness and the optimism that you had about life because bad things have happened. So you're like, well, this is all it is, and that's all it's ever going to be. And I'm not going to think any differently. And then I feel like when adults do shift it to try to do better, is because, again, something really bad happened and you're trying to pull yourself out of that. And then you finally shift. But I think with like the work you're doing and even just what I do, my hope is just that people that encounter us or people that share are able to start earlier. It's like be proactive about your life. Don't wait for bad things to happen. Be proactive and you start these habits. And then when bad things do happen, you won't feel as bad about it. Like, yes, you're still going to go through grief. You're still going to be sad. You're still going to have emotions, but you're going to be able to navigate it better than you would have if you didn't have these habits and skills of going to therapy, journaling, talking to people, reading, just trying to better yourself.
Nah, facts. Yeah, so it's like there's never a blueprint or a manual, but there's things that do work, and that's what I just try to instill in the next generation. Is like what I know for sure, like is a universal tool. I'll always share, or I never tell someone like I would say this is just my perspective. This is not my opinion because
Exactly.
you can take this and run with it and it may not work and then no, I'm just giving you perspective because I think it's important to understand the whole picture before you judge it, right? Or before you start to jump to conclusions, which is hard. It's hard because in a moment emotions arise, anything can happen, but it's like before you make a decision, a life-changing decision, even like going to schools is like understanding your bigger picture, understand
Yep.
like what are you trying to do, or understand everything before you like react.
Yeah, for sure. And then last thing before I have you close out and give the people what you want them to know about you, your book, how to find you, all that stuff. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Um, some advice I would give to my younger self is I would say be yourself. I think who I became as a product of like a mixture of my belief of like this is who I was supposed to be. So I was going to get here one way or another. It's
Yep.
like a GPS. You have multiple ways to get to a destination, right? So I think where I'm at today is where I was going to be. But I think there was times that being myself, I would have learned more about myself at an
Hmm.
earlier age where I didn't have to go back now as a young adult trying to understand. Um, and I think I would have tried more things as well too, which could have exposed me to different things.
Yeah.
And different things I didn't succeed at if I was being my more myself and not anybody else. Um, things could have been a little different. And I always talk about my presidency. It was like the worst leadership experience of my life. And
And that's honest. You have to be honest with yourself.
it was because I wasn't myself. And that's why I teach now with my workshops. Um, everybody's a leader. You just don't know it yet. And I think for me, my leadership was based off of what I saw, not who I was,
Yep.
and that impacted me. So even as a young adult, it did. So now I'm looking back at all the decisions I made as a youth because I wasn't being myself. I was being what I saw, not who I was, or I was being
Yeah.
what I was told and not who I was. And that's why I also teach young people that we're going to identify labels at the beginning of the workshop, but at the end, we're going to rip these labels off
Yeah.
and physically throw them in the trash. Um, and I think for me, that's the best advice I could give myself, my younger self, is to be yourself more, because I think I wouldn't have went through as much
Hmm.
self um, inflictions because it was very much like self inflicted decisions I was making that only impacted me. Before we close out, shout out to you for this amazing podcast, amazing platform where you can create a community of young adults helping young adults. Like we're going through this together, and I've learned some things you ain't learned. Learned some things I didn't learn, and it's also just helping people. So that's one. I had to give you your flowers right then and there. That's one. And then number two is my book. So Grow Through What You Go Through is a self-help book for young adults where each chapter is focused on a growth tool that I've created based on my life experiences, based on my professional knowledge. So each chapter is entitled a different thing. So one chapter is entitled shadow boxing, where and it's at the end. So it's like you're versing the old version of yourself that you started with in chapter one, and now this is the last chapter. So that's one, brick by brick mentality. These different tools where I share knowledge, information, and um, how to really take that, but then apply it to your life. And that's what at the end of each chapter is a growth assignment where you're going to take what I taught you, what you learned, and then you're going to apply it to your life right away. And that's ultimately what the book is, what it's focused on. And um, when it comes to grow through what you go through, the one thing I want you to understand is that it's a tool. It's not a book. It's a tool box, and each chapter is a tool and a toolkit. And you can pick that up, put it down, pick it up, put it
Mm-hmm.
down whenever you need it, whenever you need a certain chapter. It's a short read. So it's also easy to find certain things that you need to kind of realign yourself and become the best version of yourself. So that's what Grow Through What You Go Through is. It also has different stories, different people's stories, my stories that are also just helping people understand the points that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And you can purchase that at whatyougothrou.com. What you go through,
Go through.
and through is spelled THRU.com. And then as far as speaking services, keynotes, workshops, I talked about leadership. I talked about personal development, my story. When it comes to that, I focus on college students, but I also work with staff that are in direct service, that are in a team, and I help them understand the importance of leadership
Mm-hmm.
individually and collectively. And you can find me and my services and more about what I have to offer, how I impact. You can hear testimonials from directors, students, everybody um, that has ever really heard my speech.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me at faithandeffort.org, all one word, faith and effort, A and D in the middle.
Gotcha. And that will all be in our notes. And I, again, greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate you saying one thing I want to add about that book, which I love so much. And I'm finally going to order my copy. It is a hardcover book, everybody. That really sends it over the top for me. It's a very nice quality book. So make sure you grab the book.
Nah, for sure. And thank you again for having